All right, hello everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to another week of openings. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of openings the past few weeks, I've noticed. So today for my class, I have prepared the King's Indian Defense. I've already done the Italian with whites, Najdorf Sicilian previous week with the black pieces, and today the King's Indian Defense again with the black pieces. So I've actually restricted myself to show you a few variations, like the main lines, the basics, just not too many, because I had some feedback from previous week from the Najdorf that I was just showing too much and I was going maybe a bit too fast, especially for beginners. For beginners, it was maybe a little bit too much. But of course, I want to show you as much as I can. I wanted to show you all possible variations, but I realized that just wasn't possible to do in 1 hour. So I learned from that mistake, and today I have just selected a few main variations, main lines, most common moves, and we're going to be looking at that. So yeah, it's not just too much. And then I will show you 2 games played between grandmasters as well, to show you how they would play it, and you can get some inspiration or something. Yeah. So I actually did some research about the King's Indian Defense, and I have read that it's a very passive opening. I also saw some videos where they keep on saying that it's a passive opening. If you're an aggressive player, that you shouldn't play King's Indian. But I'm not sure if I agree with that. And I'm going to prove those websites wrong, because King's Indian can be very aggressive. It can be... oh my god, yes, Aryan! Indeed, we're going to see that game. Yeah, I think it's a pretty famous game. Yes, we're going to see that game. Don't spoil it yet. Don't spoil it yet. We're going to see that game indeed. It's a very, very nice game. So, yeah, I will dive right into it then. Okay. I don't even remember what I was saying. Okay, so the King's Indian Defense with black. So white goes d4, and instead of going d5 or any other move, black here goes knight f6. And after c4, we go g6. And after knight c3, we develop our bishop, e4 and d6. So here we have already the typical the typical King's Indian setup structure for black. So black has a pawn on g6, a pawn on d6, and 2 developed minor pieces on a king side already. It might look like a very defensive setup. It might look like a passive setup, because black is playing against all opening principles. Because white has taken over the entire center with the e4 pawn, d4 pawn, c4 pawn, and also a knight developed on c3. And black is not even trying hard to fight back, to take some squares in the central squares. Black is just putting a pawn on g6 and d6 and developing those minor pieces. So it looks like black is just passively setting up the pieces and just slowly developing. But we will see that black will also be very aggressive later on. So it's not just defense. It's not just all passive, but black will also attack. And you will see that black will attack on the king side, and white will mostly attack on the queen side. So it's gonna be opposite sided attacks, and this can be very, very dangerous and aggressive. So yeah, and the King's Indian is also played by many strong players, grandmasters. Kasparov has played it. I'm actually going to show you a game played of his, and also Fischer. But nowadays, also many grandmasters still played, because it could go either way. It's either, well, they're not really drawish games here. It's either black wins or white wins. So it's like 50-50, because it's very, very aggressive, and the fastest, the side is that's the fastest wins. That's what I wanted to say. So yeah, okay. All right, let's see how black will develop the pieces and set up a nice attack. Yes, Hikaru, indeed. All right, so knight f3, yeah, there are also other moves here that white could play. For example, f3 is also a move, or bishop e2, but we're just gonna focus on mainline knight f3. Like I said, I don't want to show you just too many variations because it's gonna be too much to take in at once. So yeah, let's look at knight f3 with when white plays knight f3. And now we're gonna castle, bishop e2, developing the bishop, but also preparing to castle. Now we go e5. Finally, black is also putting some pressure on the center. It's not allowing black to take on the center all by itself. So e5, pushing that pawn. And now white could go several ways. So, no, I'm not going to show the bone cloud variation. So, so white could now go castle, d takes e5, or d5. So let's have a look at d takes e5 first. Okay. All right. So d takes e5. This is considered of a more drawish option / choice. More preferred by those who like a draw because, well, after d takes e5, you're basically allowing exchange of queens. So after queen takes, rook takes, you're not really going for a kingside attack anymore. Yeah, it's now a middle game, and it's not even that dangerous anymore. But e5 pawn is hanging. So let me ask you, can white just simply win that pawn with knight takes e5? So yeah, we've exchanged the queens, but we didn't take that pawn in account. So if white takes that pawn, what happens then? What happens then? Is white just winning a pawn here? Yeah, it's a bit boring. It's a bit boring option to take that pawn. So most people will play something else. So is white winning a pawn here? Okay, yeah, indeed. Yeah, very good. Yeah, white is not just simply winning a pawn, because now we can take that pawn back, and this knight is basically not protected, as you can see. And after knight takes e4, we take that, and it's about equal. So we did not lose a pawn. So it's fine that this happens. All right, but of course, white does not have to take that pawn. It's a boring option, but white could also go d5. And this is another typical move of white, to push that pawn to d5. And once you see that there's a pawn on d5 in the King's Indian defense, you can call this the Petrosian system, because this was named after Tigran Petrosian. He played this, and this pawn move is basically preventing knight c6. Yeah, indeed, very good. Knight is protecting that knight move. So now black will have to decide how to develop that knight. But most likely the knight will develop to c5, either on d7 to c5 or a6 to c5. So, but either way, the knight will try to go to a more active square, which is c5, because, well, black cannot go to c6 anymore, and we still want to develop our knight, don't we? So after d5, black will play a5, and a5 is preventing b4, but also knight a6 will still come. So a5, very natural move, preventing b4. So b4 would be kind of annoying, because it would take away the c5 square, and we want our knight on that square. So that's why a5. And now white could go bishop g5, pinning a knight, and after we go h6, the bishop retreats, and now we could go knight a6. Again, we go to c5 because the knight is very active there, and it cannot be attacked, at least not now, because the a5 pawn is protecting the b4 square. And once the knight is on c5, it's also putting some pressure on the e4 pawn, as you can see. So, yeah. All right. Let's go back. So these were two options: d takes e5, a little bit more drawish, and d5. But now here, the main move here is castle. Castle, and now black could also go several ways. The most played move is knight c6. This is the main move here. But black also has some other options, which I'm going to show you. So black could also go knight a6, for example. So if you, for example, you don't want to play like the main line because you're afraid that your opponent is just going to know all the theory, and you don't want it to be too theoretical, you might try out some of these moves. So, for example, knight a6 or knight to d7 is actually the same idea as knight a6. What is it doing? Well, you're basically you're preparing your knight to go to c5, because after white plays d5, the square on c5 is available for your knight. So, so your knight will go to c5 after d5, and then you're immediately attacking the e4 pawn. So if you're afraid that the pawn on b4 will attack your knight after your knight is on c5, then you don't need to worry, because white will first have to protect this pawn on e4. So yeah, that's the idea behind knight a6, but also knight d7 to go to c5 eventually. So, all right, and also e takes d4 is a possible move for black here. Knight a6, interesting, yes, indeed. Yeah, so I'm not gonna go too far into this because otherwise it's just gonna be too much like previous week. I think I just showed too many variations and it was just a bit too much for most of you guys, but also some of you found it just good. The speed was just good. So it really depends on your level of strength. But of course, Coach S is more focused on beginners, so that's why I wanted to make it a bit more enjoyable for everyone. So let's yeah. Yeah, like I said, some people think it was good, some people found it too fast and too much in 1 hour, so which I can understand. All right, so e takes d4, knight takes d4, and here we go, rook e8, attacking the pawn on e4 twice with our rook and our knight. And now white will have to protect that pawn. So the most natural move here is to play f3, little pawn move, protecting that pawn. And now black goes c6. And what is c6 doing? Well, black basically wants to break the center with d5 because white has two very strong pawns on e4 and c4. And also very strong knight on d4, so we don't want to give it all to white, right? So d6 to d5 is coming next, and also white has some good prospects with the space advantage as well. As you can see, white has not a good bishop here on e2 because it's kind of blocked behind its own pawns. All the pawns are on white, and it's not really doing much at the moment. But yeah, so c6 is preparing to push to d5 and basically also getting some space in the center and breaking those, breaking the center. All right, so those are some options, some possible moves you could go for with black if you don't want to play the main move here, which is knight c6, and which we will be having a deeper look at right now. E takes e4 is worth attention. Yes, indeed. Yeah, that's the idea. Exactly, Vadim. Very good. So, knight c6, and now d5. White also has some other options to play. But this is, yeah, this is what most people would play, because, well, white is basically grabbing some advantage in the center by pushing that pawn and preparing to play on the queen side. And now black, of course, will go to e7 because, well, all the other squares aren't really that good for the knight. If you would go back to b8, then you basically just lost the tempo, and all the other moves aren't really doing it. So knight e7, retreating your knight to e7. Basically, the idea behind this is also to prepare f7 to f5. So once this knight is gone, black will try to push this pawn, this f pawn, to f5. Because white wants to play on the queen side and we need to find a way to play on the king side. So that's the idea for black. And now also white has many options here to play. White clearly has an advantage here in the center with the pawn, like I said. And yeah, you'll see some very, very aggressive lines here. Yes, indeed. Opposite-sided attacks. So it will be very aggressive and dangerous, which you will see now. Okay, so now, like I said, white has some different options here. Knight to e1 was played for the longest time. This is the main line here. But also, knight d2 is possible, or b4. And let's have a look at those as well. So let's look at b4 first. Does anyone know how this is called, this attack? If white goes b4. Does anyone know? Aryan knows it all. Are you a King's Indian player? I think you are. You know everything. Indeed. It's called a Bayonet Attack. Very good. Yep, very good, Calvin. Yes, very good. So, b4. And now, white, as you can see, white... What was the question? What is this attack called? If white goes b4 immediately. But yeah, many people know it. It's called a Bayonet Attack. So b4, white is immediately playing on the queen side, immediately pushing those pawns and trying to grab some space there and to be fast. Because if you're playing on opposite sides, it's about who's fastest, all right? And white, of course, doesn't want black to be faster because black is, of course, going for checkmate, is going for the king. And white is going for the queen side where there's no king. So it's a little bit more risky for white if black succeeds the attack on the king side. So white also has to be fast. And you can't stay passive here. So now black goes knight to h5. And knight to h5 is basically freeing the way for this pawn. But also with idea to go to f4 with the knight. All right. Now rook to e1. This looks like a natural move, like putting your rook on the e-file, but it's not to activate the rook. The idea behind rook e1 is to get your bishop to f1. Once the knight gets to f4, then white will have to give up one of those bishops, and I think white wants to keep that bishop pair. So after knight f4, bishop to f1 will happen. So let me show you like this, and then bishop to f1, and yeah. Okay. So instead of going knight f4, of course, we want to play on a king side, and we go f5. We're playing aggressively. So black is now also starting to push in the pawns. White is doing the same thing, and it's getting a little bit dangerous. All right, so now let's go back. I'm not gonna get into this too much because these are just some sidelines. So that was b4, and now let's have a look at knight to d2. This is actually a similar move to knight e1, which I will explain after this. All right. a5 is also possible. Okay, yeah, maybe. So yeah, I've only picked some. I don't want to show you too many, like I said, because otherwise it's just gonna explode your head. So yeah, knight d2 is also a typical move here to play for white, because once black starts to push that f pawn to f5, then white will be able to go f3 to defend a little bit, and then white is happy that the knight is not on f3 anymore. But also, knight d2 is kind of preparing to push b4 and c5. And once there's a pawn on c5, the knight will have a nice spot on c4. So can you visualize that a bit? If there are pawns here, here and then there will be a knight there. So that'll be a very nice spot for the knight. And now after knight to d2, there's a5 again for black, trying to slow down the attack on the queen side for white. So you're now temporarily stopping b4, but white will still be able to push it later on. But okay, so let me go back to the main move here, which is knight to e1. Knight to e1. So this was the main line for the longest time, and the idea behind this is, well, not just to keep your knight on e1. You don't want your knight to be passively placed on e1, but you want to reroute your knight to the d3 square. That's where you want your knight to be. So that's the square for your knight. And once your knight is on d3, you're again supporting those pawns. The c4 pawn, after b4, you will push c5. And then once the knight is on d3, you're protecting that pawn, and yeah, you're basically trying to push that. So yeah, that's knight e1. And also again, after f7, f5, you will also be able to play f3. So that's why the knight retreats to e1, which looks passive, but it's not. The knight is not going to stay there for too long. Okay, so now knight to d7. So now you're preparing to push the pawn to f5. Again, that's the idea. You want to do that at all costs. Otherwise, white is just gonna be pushing those pawns on the queen side. So now bishop e3, developing a bishop, but also preparing to play f3 after f5, which happens here. f5, f3. And now after f4, we have our bishop on f2. And bishop on f2 is a little bit protecting the white king. So if it were on c1, then there wouldn't be too many pieces here left on the king side to protect a bit, I guess. And also bishop on f2 is also looking at the diagonal in order to push that pawn as well. Okay, now g5, yes, exactly, Aryan. You're saying all the correct moves. Very, very good. Okay, so g5, and now, as you can see, it is getting pretty dangerous and sharp. Black is really pushing those pawns. There's a very strong pawn on f4. The g pawn is coming. Many other minor pieces of black are coming, and white should be a little bit careful, but yeah, it's getting very aggressive here. And now white will have to play immediately on the queen side to be as fast as you can. Okay, so after g5, I'm gonna show you a game that is played between Kasparov and Piquet? Is it pronounced like that? I don't know. Aryan, I think he knew this. I think, yeah, many King's Indian players would know this game. I think it's a very nice game. So now b4 comes. b4, and yeah, it's getting sharp, guys. It's getting sharp. So now we're getting our knight back to f6. We're getting back to f6 because, well, we had to move our knight in order to play f7, f5. Otherwise, well, yeah, it will be blocked by the knight. But now, once our pawn is on f4, we can put our knight back on f6 and back in onto the king on a king side. Okay. Now c5, and now we go knight to g6. So we're getting both of our knights there, and now both sides are doing their own attack, their own thing. So white takes that pawn. Kasper officially loved this defense. Yes, I was really perplexed by this game. Okay, so c takes and rook to c1 now. So white is also getting some advantage on the c file. So the queen side is for white and the king side is for black. All right, now rook f7 is a very, actually a typical move here in the King's Indian. Oh, I have a little update here. Okay, it's gone now. So rook f7 looks like a weird move, actually, kind of, not really, but it makes sense though, because what's the idea behind rook f7? You're doing two things. So you're defending the queen side a bit, so also the 7th rank, but you also have the idea to go bishop f8 and rook to g7, and that is that's a very well-known idea here to play, because bishop f8 is protecting the d6 pawn, and rook to g7 is basically, well, looking at the king. So yeah. All right, so now rook to f7 and white goes a4, playing on a queen side, of course, pushing that pawn, and bishop f8, so protecting that pawn. But in this game, black is not going rook to g7, but I'm going to show you a game after this one where black does play rook takes g7, because that's something black does play. So now a5, and we go bishop to d7, also developing that bishop a bit, and after knight b5, with the idea to enter on the c7 square, we go g4, exclamation mark. So we push our g4 pawn. We shouldn't really care too much about the queen side, just care about our own attack, I would say, and just keep pushing those pawns. Okay, now white goes knight to c7, and black plays a remarkable move. What would you guys play here in this position? So yeah, I want to know what you would play here. What move would you play in this position? Should we care about this rook, or shouldn't we? Should we move our rook aside, or do we just attack the king? I think you can already kind of guess which of those two you would play. So yeah, knight c7 is actually attacking our rook. It's a threat, but is it a big threat though? That's the question. Is it a big threat? Attack, 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 yes. But which move would you play then? What's a very attacking move then? If you don't care about the rook, which move is really, really attacking? Yeah, indeed, don't care about the a8 rook. Yeah, that is true. But what move do we play then? h5, g3. Let me see on Twitch if anyone has said something. Well, h5 is not really threatening anything. There's a move that is actually threatening something. Yes, it's... yeah, you gotta keep in mind that this rook is attacked, right? So you gotta make a very like an attacking move. So indeed, most people have guessed it. It's indeed the move g3. G3, and you're just not caring about that rook on A8. Just take it. I don't care about that rook. Black doesn't care about material. Black cares about checkmate. So that's one thing playing the King's Indian, that you're fully playing on the king side. So G3. Oh my. So well, okay. We take it. We take the rook, and now we go knight to H5. And now let me ask you, why would we play knight to H5? Why don't we just simply take back this knight on A8? Like, it's a very logical move. Why don't we just take it back? Why did black play knight to H5? Is there a bigger threat for white here than taking back that knight on A8? Is there a bigger threat? What is knight H5 doing? Okay, that's good. Fair enough. Yeah, you're freeing your queen. But what do you mean with freeing your queen? Where do you want to put your queen? Some people say just freeing your queen, but yeah, of course, that's true. You're moving your knight out of the way of your queen, and you have many squares to put your queen at. But do you want to put your queen on G5, or do you want to put your queen on H4, or do you want to put your queen on F6? Yes, true. Yeah, the idea is to go queen to H4. And what is it doing on H4? Well, you have a big threat once your queen is on H4. You're threatening checkmate. So if white is just not careful and just tries to, let's say, escape with the knight, then, well, there's just queen H4. And it's just, white can just resign. So that's why white will white has to go king H1. So that's what Gary's opponent played. I forgot his name again. Piquet, something like that. King H1, and now should I ask you which? No, I'm not gonna ask you. It's a pretty logical move, I guess. G takes F2. We take the bishop there, and okay. So we take the bishop. Oh, this is what I wanted to ask. Why can't we go queen H4 now? Because now we're threatening checkmate. We're still threatening it. Why can't we go queen H4 now? What is the meaning behind king H1 for white? So what? Okay, yeah. So yeah, indeed, there's bishop G1, and you're protecting the mate. So that's not good. Okay, and what happens after white goes H3? So now there's no checkmate. We can't go queen H2 because this pawn is blocking it. What do we do now? I'm just testing your tactical skills. What do we do now? Very strong chat. Very good. Yeah, indeed. We just take that pawn, and after take, we just take back, and it's just checkmate in one. Here. Yep, indeed. We have a sack. Indeed. So that's why we don't go queen to h4. It's not mating. It's just not mating. And we just gotta take that bishop. Yeah. All right, we take that bishop. Okay, so now white takes it back. And black goes knight g3 check. We're sacrificing our knight. Okay, so now what happens after white takes a knight? Again, some tactics. What happens now? Well, for sure, black wouldn't just go knight g3 and just give up on a knight. There's a meaning behind it. So what's the meaning behind knight? What's the meaning behind knight to g3 check? This is what you call chess, right? Very nice game. Very aggressive as well. There's no queen h4 though. There's no queen h4 because white can just take the queen then. And there's just no checkmate. What do we do? Someone says queen h4. Ooh. Ooh. I would not do that. There's a pawn on g3. Yeah, indeed. Wait, let me check the other chat. Yeah, indeed. We take that pawn first, and then we're threatening queen to h4 again. So, again, we will be able to checkmate, and queen h4 is just unstoppable, and the threat on h2 as well. So that's why white does not take that knight, because it just loses on the spot. Tal would sack the queen. I wouldn't sack the queen in this position, though. You really want to check. I think you really need your queen here. You can sack all your other pieces, but not your queen. Okay. Okay. So, yeah. So, as you can see, black doesn't really care about the pieces. Like, material doesn't mean anything if you're able to checkmate your opponent. So check, and now, well, the only move to go is king g1 if you don't want to get mated. So king g1, and now we just simply take that knight. And white goes bishop c4. Probably doesn't want, okay, we'll see. So a6, what is, oh, what? Oh, this is a beautiful move. Someone already said it in the beginning, and I want to see if you guys know the idea behind a6. So a6, you might think, okay, a6 is just stopping the b5 pawn, right? So there's no b5, and okay, cool. But what is the actual reason behind a6? It's doing something else. There's another reason behind it, a more deeper meaning behind a6 than just stopping b5. Does anyone know? For the beginners, try not to look at chat again. Try to think for yourself. It might be a bit hard to see it because, well, a6, yeah, it's obviously trying to stop e5, which you would think, but it's also doing something else. Is this a game with amazing queen move? Ah, spoiled it. Very good. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Yeah, so the meaning behind a6 is to create a little spot for the queen on a7. So a nice little square, sneaky square for the queen. So we have total control over this diagonal, which is very useful. Now queen to d3. And now we can place our rook or a queen on a7, and we're pinning that rook a little bit. Okay, now white still nevertheless goes b5, doesn't care. We take that pawn, takes back. And now a very beautiful move played. Already someone has said it in chat, but I still want to see if you guys can see the beautiful move. What move did Kasparov play in this position? A very nice move. What move is it? And making use of the queen on a7. What move did black play? Yes, exactly, George. This is a gameplay between Piquet, Kasparov. So what move did black play? Okay. Okay, I see the correct answers. I do. But I still want to give those who don't see it yet some more time. I'm going to give you 30 seconds more. It's a very nice little move, and it's not a move you would think of immediately. Why am I asking it once more? I know that's the people who set the move immediately are stronger players. And I just want to give those who just started to learn chess or aren't that good yet the opportunity to think for themselves. So that I don't reveal the answer immediately. These kids games by Kasparov are very instructive. I agree. Queen e3? You want to go queen e3? Well, there's okay, let's make the move queen e3. Why would you play queen e3? Ah, you want to play queen e3 so you're attacking the rook there, right? But you also got to keep in mind that this knight is hanging. So we got to be careful of that. So white can now just simply exchange the queens. And we have to take back, otherwise we're just a queen down. And then I guess we just go... Ah, wait, we go Ruby 2 to defending that bishop. And there's not really a threat anymore. So there's a much stronger move, and many people have already guessed it. And the move is indeed knight to h1. Knight to h1. What is this move? Well, you're basically attacking that rook twice with the knight, but also with the queen. And so, well, Piquet played king takes, and now we take that rook. And now actually white resigned here because, as you can see, white is down a piece, and the attack on the queen side is just completely gone. There are no pawns basically left. There's only a pawn on a5, which is not a pass pawn. The pawn on d5, well, it's blocked by the d6 pawn. And yeah, well, the attack is basically gone. And black is just doing very well. The queen is very active, and is also a piece up. So didn't even see it. Yeah, I think it's a pretty hard move to see, and it's also not a move you would think of at first. So. Yep. All right. It's been years since you've seen this. Yeah, it's a very nice one, right? Okay. So now I still have another game. I think I'll just be in time. I have another game play between Najdorf and Gligoric. And in this game, like I said, the idea behind Rook F7. Do you remember the move Rook F7, which seemed weird, but it was doing something? Well, in this game, we're gonna see that the Rook on F7 is actually gonna go to G7. So you usually see black preparing G4 with H5. In this game, you're gonna see H5 first. Yeah. But in the game of Kasparov, they didn't do it, and yeah. Okay, so in this game, you'll see it. Indeed, yeah. Rook F7, and with idea to go to G7. Indeed. All right, now let's go a little bit faster over the opening moves, because we've already seen it. So here, the King's Indian. And after E5, castle. The knight C6, we get our knight there on the king's side. White is getting a knight to the queen side and also preparing F3. Now we're getting our knight out of the way to push the F pawn to F5. Knight to D3, preparing the pawn push from B2 to B4 and C4 to C5. Now we push our pawn to F5. White goes F3. We push our pawn. Again, more very aggressive. Bishop goes to D2. We get our knight back on the king side. White goes B4. G5. Yeah, very good. Pawn on D5, Petrosian. G5. Now black is going for an attack, and now C5. And now instead of doing anything else, and now getting knight on G6, I think was in the previous game. Black goes H5. So here you're actually preparing the G4 pawn push. So now white goes knight to F2. What is knight F2 doing? Well, you're basically stopping G4. So now knight G6. We're getting our other knight into the game. White goes rook to C1. And now we have our typical rook movement to F7, again with the idea to go bishop F8 and rook G7. So once your bishop is on F8, you're protecting that D6 pawn, and you're also getting your rook on that nice little G file, looking at the king. So white takes that pawn, we take it back, and now A4, bishop F8. Okay. And now A5, and we go rook G7. So here we actually see that black goes for rook G7 and actually slowly preparing to push G4 instead of immediately pushing G4. So now H3, really trying to prevent at all costs that G4 happens. And now also a typical maneuver here for black as knight to H8. So yeah, that looks like a weird move, doesn't it? Why would you go to the corner with your knight? What is the idea behind knight to H8? Does anyone know the idea behind it? Yeah, very good, Calvin. You're blocking the center and you're going for opposite-sided attacks. True. So why did Gligoric play knight to H8? Because it doesn't seem like a natural move to play. Because your knight was standing just fine on G6. Why do you go back to H8? Did the Twitch stream crash? Let me refresh. No, it didn't. Okay. I thought it crashed. It didn't. Okay, fine. Let me see what you guys are thinking. To push G4, yeah, true. You're getting your knight out of the way so that the rook is looking, is having more attacking opportunities. True. That is, yeah. But what does the knight go? Where's the knight going? Wait, I don't know if someone has already said it. Let me see. Ah, yes. Okay, Arjan, of course, knows it. Of course you know it. Reroute to H6, indeed. Exactly. That's the idea behind knight to H8. You're not only opening up the G file a bit for your rook, but you're also trying to put your knight You're putting your knight on a better square. So that's the idea. Knight to F7 with the idea to go to H6. And then you're supporting once again the G4 pawn. So you're getting all of your pieces to support that pawn. So that's the idea behind it. Okay, so knight to B5. We also saw that in previous game when the knight went to C7 and Gary just didn't care about that rook and just went all in on a king side, on a king. And now, well, instead of going knight f7, knight h6, which might be too slow, Gligoric went G4 immediately, which is also possible, because, well, the rook is supporting that pawn anyway. So after f takes that pawn, we take it back, white takes back, and now instead of going knight f7, we go a6 first, getting that knight out of there. White is playing like nothing happened. I would be very scared with the white pieces, to be honest. With this rook on a g file. Yep. Indeed. So knight retreats to a3. We get our bishop to the d7, developing a bit. But now knight c7 with the idea to go to b6. Because, yeah, a6 kind of weakened the b6 square because the knight can now go there. But that's not really a problem. We get our rook on c8. And after knight to b6, we trade off that rook. And we really value this white squared bishop, actually. So we don't want white to take that bishop. That's why Gligoric went bishop to e8 to avoid the trade. Why so much fight for g4 square? Well, yeah, indeed. You want to break open the king side so that you can get as many pieces on that side as possible. And the goal is basically to checkmate white. So that's why you want that's why you want to break open with the g4. Because g4 just, well, it creates more open files. As you can see, the h file now has opened up. The G file will also be opened up later on, and it can be very, 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 very dangerous. And now, well, black is just better here, and bishop to a3, and we go with our knights. Now we go with our knight to f7 with idea to go to h6. After queen to c2, well, white still wants a c file, but it's not that strong anymore because black is just much better in this position. Now we go knight h6, and we will be able to take the g pawn. Okay, now g5. Well, the pawn is hanging anyway, so we take it. Rook to c1, and now Gligoric went rook to g3, attacking that bishop on a3, but also positioning our rook on a better square. g3 is looking more dangerous for white as well, but this is a threat. Bishop back to b2, and now we get our knight to g4, and we're actually threatening knight to e3 with a double attack on the queen and this pawn. So white took that knight, we take it back. White takes, we take back. And now you can see that it's looking very, 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 very dangerous for white, because now the G file has almost completely opened up. The H file is open. Our queen will most likely get in there, and this rook is just very, very active, and white should really be scared here. So white went a queen to f2, kind of preventing queen to h4, but still we will get our queen there eventually. So bishop g6. Now we're attacking that pawn, like you can see. As you can see, white protects that pawn, and now we go queen e7. If we can go to h4, then we will have to find a way to put our queen somewhere else. And the idea behind queen e7 is to go queen h7 to get the queen on the h file, which is very active for the queen. And once the queen is on the h file, we'll be able to get our rook on the h file as well. And that's a big threat, because we're threatening checkmate. All right, now bishop to c3, and black goes queen h7. The queen gets out of the way because, well, white is now attacking the rook, but knows that after rook to h4, that rook h1 would be a threat. So we still go there. King to f2, and now black played a nice move here. What did black play? What would you play here? Opening up the position even more. Little hint. What did black play here? So we do have our queen on our rook on the h file, looking very active, but we still have a nice move here. Very nice, very good, guys. Oh, everyone is saying the correct answer, and the move indeed is f3, breaking breaking the, well, trying to exchange those pawns so that the king is even more vulnerable. The problem here is that white cannot take with the, well, if white takes with the queen, then we have rook f4, and we're pinning that queen. If white takes with that pawn, then we have rook to h2. So either way, we'll win that queen. So Najdorf actually here went queen e3, I think it was. Yeah, queen to e3. And now we go rook to f4. We don't need to take that pawn immediately. We could just simply go there. We still have a threat to take there, and the queen will also get into there with some checks, and it will soon be game over. So Najdorf decided to take that pawn because it's just very desperate now. And now we get our queen on h2. The king has to move. We get another check. The king moves, and now what does black play? What does black play? Gonna let you guys think a bit. What did black play here? Do we go for another check or something else? What would we play here? Yeah, indeed. Very good. Very good. Yeah, bishop to h5. Very good, guys. Putting more pressure on that pawn. Putting more pressure there. And, well, the pawn is lost anyway, so might as well just escape. Get as far as you can from that side. The king side is just not safe anymore. And the king goes to d2. Trying to escape, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work, Najdorf. So now we take that pawn, attacking the queen. White goes for a check, but it's not going to be perpetual because we can just simply put our bishop in between. And also after a move like queen to d8, we can just simply move our king there. Or maybe even get a rook in between so that there's no check anymore. So now the king moves. We go for another check. Bishop in between, and, well, we go for another check. Soon it's gonna be checkmate. Soon it's gonna be checkmate. So queen to d1 check, king moves aside, another check, and here white resigned because it's mate in 6. But I do wanna challenge you guys a bit to find the mate in 6. So if you can tell me if anyone could see the mate in 6, then I will give you a big applause. I'll give you a shout out. So, yeah, tell me. So, let's see. Let's say white goes king b3. So, how do we mate now? How do we mate in 6? A little challenge. A little challenge. Why not? So, if you're looking at mate in 6, you might want to look at forcing moves, such as checks. Checks are very forcing moves. This might be too hard for some people, but a challenge never hurts nobody. Am I right? Okay, yeah, you guys are saying the first move. But could you give me a series of moves? Okay, I'll help you out a bit. Indeed, it is bishop to d1, and then white goes rook to c2 to, well, basically to slow down the mate. Now it's mate in 5. What do we do now? Forcing move. Forcing moves. Checks. Checks, checks, checks. And after this move, you're basically just threatening mate in 2. Yeah. Yeah, Rook F3 is possible, but there's a faster move actually. I know it's there are many moves that are checkmating. Rook F3 would definitely be possible. But here the fastest way to checkmate is Queen B1. Yeah, indeed. Very good, Ariane. Queen B1. Just simply go there. If King goes to C3, then, well, it's just checkmate. And if, well, the King goes to A3, what do we do now? What do we do now? Now it's not a check move. Now we do something else, and we're threatening mate in 1 after that move. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, bishop takes e2 or queen takes e2. Threaten mating, checkmate in 1 on b3 here. And yeah, white doesn't really have anything to stop it. Well, white can only go for some desperate moves. Queen d8, for example, but then we get a rook in between. The queen will take, and it will just be checkmate on the next move. So that's just an unstoppable mate. Voila, that was it. That was it, guys. I hope you liked those games, especially the first one was very nice, right? Also a famous game. And yeah, I also enjoyed this game as well. So that was a King's Indian. You love these games. That's good to hear. That's good. I'm glad to hear that you guys enjoyed it. So yeah, all right, that was it. And I hope I'll be back next week on Wednesday again. We'll see about that. And I wish you all a very happy day or evening. And I will see you.